The charges mount. But Trump's not worried. He's just a guy to make the jail great again. There's no telling how many indictments he will collect before the election. And the sad fact is that his party doesn't seem to care. Donald Trump announced his latest indictment last night in front of a painting of a guy literally twirling his mustache. "I am an innocent man," the former president said, next to this cartoon shorthand for villainy. The oil painting in question is not so much of an artwork as a lift music version of an artwork and seems to hang at Trump's Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey, which is the same place he buries his former wife Ivana, as all admirers of both exquisite taste and private cemetery tax breaks may already know. Either way, Ivana's there, right near the first tee. It's what she would have wanted. As for her surviving ex-husband, it's fashionable to say that anything that would represent a catastrophic setback for any other human being is exactly what Trump would have wanted. By this metric, his indictment on federal charges for the first time, including under the Espionage Act, is an absolute gift and a triumph. He'll use it to pull in fundraising. It'll rally his base and it'll make every Republican beta, which is to say every Republican, feel they have to swear loyalty to him. Furthermore, it's already got him right where he most loves to be, with everyone talking about him. And these are all reasonable points, or at least reasonable in a through-the-looking-glass way, given that to many outside observers the United States passed recent 2 or 3 election cycles ago. If only they could invade themselves to bring democracy. Even so, it must be said the Espionage Act is one of the not great laws to allegedly break, rather like obstruction of justice of which Trump also stands accused. Individuals convicted of those felonies can face long stretches in facilities that are often entirely oil painting free and have never been offered the chance to host a golf major. They do, however, have lively canteens and communal areas, which could make Mr. Clubhouse feel at home. As always with this defendant, however, let's not run ahead of ourselves. Trump has been indicted by the Justice Department on 7 counts that are still under seal, but relate to his mishandling and retention of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. He is due in court on Tuesday in Miami. Following an incomplete search of his Palm Beach estate and club last year by members of his own legal team, then an FBI raid some months later. The document saga constitutes something Trump keeps calling the boxes hoax. Quick note on vocab. Down the rabbit hole we all descended some years ago. Hoax is the antidote to gate, a sort of all-purpose bolt-on Trump can use to dismiss any scandal. Once he called it a hoax, the true scandal becomes the fact that anyone is trying to tar him with a scandal. Trump himself becomes the poor local innocent who is being persecuted on account of his being mildly unconventional. See also witch hunt. To Mar-a-Lago, then, where someone saw Goody Trump with a classified document about Iran's missile program, and another about US intelligence work in China, and at least 100 of other mildly unconventional classified souvenirs of his time in office. Clearly, these are the sorts of keepsakes that any of us, had we ascended to the presidency, may afterwards wish to retain and transport to our home, which is also a members club thronging with hundreds of terrible people at any given time. Anyone now taking the opportunity to chant "lock him up" is indulging in pure McCarthyism. Unfortunately, that is not how Jack Smith, special counsel for the documents investigation, seems to have seen it. I am also confused that Mr. Smith has not accepted Trump's earlier suggestion that he could declassify documents merely by thinking about it. Last September, the former president told Fox News there doesn't have to be a process as I understand it. Yet according to that old spoilsport, the law, there apparently does. So here we are. In terms of where Trump himself is, it's complicated. He's the hot favorite for the Republican nomination and also the defendant or potential defendant in a number of ongoing legal actions. There simply isn't the space to recap all of them, But the standouts are the charges of hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, on which he has already been indicted for Manhattan state prosecutors, and the federal criminal investigation into his attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, which remains in train and for which Smith is also the special counsel. Speaking of McCarthy's, finally, the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, reacted to news of the Trump indictment in that hyper-partisan, truth-free way that has become so commonplace that it should surely redefine McCarthyism for our own era. Having begun with a false claim that Joe Biden indicted Trump, Kevin sought to delegitimize a legitimate process before kowtowing to Trump in an entirely abject style. Even Trump's not very arch rival for the Republican nomination, Ron DeSantis, was too weak to do anything other than obediently defend Trump. While elsewhere, a new poll found that 43% of Republicans believe Trump should be allowed to serve again, even if he were convicted of a felony. However positive some may feel about the charges, the whole picture is, how to put this, no oil painting. Ultimately, Trump will be easier to deal with than the culture he has created. Mr. Trump has been successful throughout his business and political career figuring out loyalty levers to reward friends and hammer foes, says Professor Schweitzer. The former president has a history of rewarding those who stand by him and attacking those who don't. Before he left office, he pardoned several of his former aides of their convictions, including his National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, his ex-advisor Roger Stone, and his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. On social media, President Trump praised Manafort for not breaking like his former lawyer, Michael Cohen. Cohen and Manafort's deputy Rick Gates were convicted in the Mueller probe into Russian interference in the 2016 election, but both cooperated with prosecutors. They, to the surprise of no one, did not get pardons from Mr. Trump. The former president's treatment of Mike Pence is another example of how he places loyalty above other values. Mr. Trump reportedly told the former vice president not to wimp out and not to certify the results of the 2020 election. According to an excerpt from Mr. Pence's book, he recounts Mr. Trump asking him, "If it gives you the power, why would you oppose it?" Professor Schweitzer says both Mr. Trump and Weisselberg were shaped by the era of the 80s New York and the mindset that greed is good. Greed was celebrated and endorsed in a way that it is not today. We had different mindsets about the Wild West of capitalism, he says. Things that we are saying are illegal were common practice. These men really enjoyed the privileges that came with being a very powerful, wealthy person in the 1980s who were not constrained by the rules that bound the rest of us. Mr. Epner agrees. The New York real estate business has been a dirty business for not decades, but centuries. And he, Mr. Trump, was part and parcel of the dirty part of the New York real estate business, and then he shone the biggest spotlight in the world on himself with the presidency. On the final day of the trial, Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Joshua Steinglass said during closing statements that the evidence had shown that Mr. Trump knew exactly what was going on. He reminded the jury of that evidence, including a memo the former president initialed authorizing a pay cut for another executive for that exact amount of his perk, rent paid by the company. Mr. Trump explicitly sanctioning fraud. That's what this document shows, Mr. Steinglass said. To many, it begged the question why the former president, who built his entire reputation and bravado off the back of his namesake company, wasn't charged too. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says investigations into Trump are ongoing. Now, here's the question. Can Trump still run for president in 2024? And the answer to that question is yes. There is nothing in the Constitution that prevents someone who is indicted or even convicted of a crime from running for president. In fact, his campaign has already started selling merchandise based on that indictment. The campaign sent a pitch touted as the last email before my arrest. They were also selling a not guilty fake mugshot photo on a t-shirt for $47, though no actual mugshot was taken. The pretend mugshot showed Trump's height on the lineup as 6'5", an extra 2 inches.